Hello everyone, back to you into today's video. We're going to have a look at weather for the next 8 to 10 days in today's video, taking us up to the 17th of October. It looks as though it's staying unsettled for this week. We may start to see signs of high pressure beginning to come back in for next week. Now, I'll have a look at all the charts in a moment, but before I get on with that, I just want to say about the ads. There's links to articles sitting underneath the weather video here on my homepage at gazweatherviz.com. Have a browse through the articles widget, and if you see any articles that you're interested in, just click through and you'll be able to go off and read those articles when you finish at gazweatherviz.com, of course. At the same time, be helping to support the website. Thanks very much for doing that. There may also be green keyword ads showing up on some of the pages with written content, so if you roll cursor over green keywords, they'll display ads, but if you click through the word, you'll go to the advertiser's website and you'll be helping to support gazweatherviz.com, and you do as well. Thanks very much for doing that. So starting off with the 500 height anomaly flow charts for the next 8 to 10 days. As I say, it's taking us up to the 17th of October, so into the second half of the month. We've got the ECMWF here on the left. The GFS is over on 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere where we've got high pressure and low pressure being moved around by the jet stream, which is running above. And for 8 to 10 days time, we see that both the ECM and the GFS have this deep trough of low pressure in the central part of the Atlantic, so unsettled conditions are still very close by. But what's happening, particularly evident on the GFS, is that heights are beginning to rise again to the east of the country. That's really where the high pressure was through most of September. And there are signs that heights are rising to the north, also maybe hinting at a bit of northern blocking up over Greenland. The ECMWF also has that hint of northern blocking around Greenland. Heights aren't rising as much over the continent, and it's more down towards the southeast of Europe where we've got that area of orange. So the ECMWF is less settled, really, than the GFS, but GFS is seeing the chance of some quite strong high pressure building in around 8 to 10 days time. We'll have a look at the charts in a moment. This is the GFS temperature and precipitation ensemble chart. The temperatures first of all, the red line here is the 30-year average, and we see that for the next week temperatures aren't going to be anything to write home about. We're a little bit below average actually at the moment. We're going to go around average and then stay around the seasonal average up to the middle of the month. This is 15th of October, just here, maybe going a little bit below average again actually over the weekend and into the start of next week. Then as we go into the second week, and this is in the period where the GFS is trying to build in high pressure, we're getting a bit of a split developing, but the general trend is actually to lift the temperatures, or at least the upper air temperatures, up a bit. Now, of course, high pressure at this time of year, we're getting very late on into the year now, so even when you've got warm upper air temperatures, it's going to very much depend on the exact nature of that high pressure as to whether it's warm down on the surface, because we're getting really long nights now. The nights are lengthening very, very rapidly now, heat radiating out of the atmosphere overnight, and that's what we call an inversion. Basically, we've got to start thinking about inversions now. Anytime from around mid to late October onwards, even when you've got it warm in terms of the upper atmosphere, it can get colder down on the surface. So I'll be talking about this more in the videos, probably starting next week. I'll be explaining what inversions are. But you have to look at the dew points, you have to look at the low level air under an area of high pressure from around late October onwards to see exactly what kind of air that high pressure is being made up by. Now, the rainfall spikes are still going through the ensemble, so it's quite unsettled to start off with, particularly over the next day or two. I don't think it's going to be too wet, really, from around Thursday onwards. There was a suggestion around Saturday we could bring an area of low pressure up from the Bay of Biscay and have a really wet day, but that's sort of going away from models now. I think just basically looking at showers, actually, we're going to be quite wet tomorrow. Once we get that out of the way, I think we're just basically looking at showers up to the weekend. And then beyond that, well, again, it's sort of this idea that there could be showers coming through, but it's hard to really say how wet it could get. We've got some quite big spikes there right at the very end of the ensemble, but that's a long way off. And overall, I don't think that's looking too wet, to be honest, once we get the next day or two out of the way. The temperature anomaly for the coming week, this takes us from the 7th to the 15th, shows that we're going to be around average, a little bit below in the north, maybe a little bit above in the south, but overall temperatures very close to the seasonal normal. And coming out a little bit drier than average as well, surprisingly. Perhaps we've got those red colours across the country from the 7th to the 15th of October, just telling us that again there's that idea in play that high pressure may be starting to ridge in later on. So let's have a look at the generic charts. This is the GFS chart for a week's time, Tuesday the 14th of October. Got high pressure building through Spain and into France. And we've got this area of low pressure out in the Atlantic. Going to be a bit of a battle perhaps between that at the start of next week, the high pressure over continent, low pressure up to the northwest. Notice we bring up this warm southwesterly push on Wednesday the 15th, but it's relatively unsettled actually. There's quite active fronts coming through with that, even though pressure is building down to the south. Around the 16th, 17th to 20th, 21st of October is often a time when you do get one final burst of quite warm southerly winds and high pressure, so it's not particularly surprising to be seeing this as we go through to Thursday the 16th and then on into Friday the 17th. The overall idea is that high pressure is beginning to take over pat with these low pressures starting to lift out and being pushed to the north. This is day 10, Friday the 17th of October. And we go out just a little bit beyond that, taking us to Saturday the 18th. See that the high pressure is building in strongly then over the country. So this really does break us out that unsettled low pressure dominated pattern. We end up by the time we get into the second half of the month under an anticyclonic pattern. Whether it'll happen that quickly, I'm not sure. The ECMWF and the GEM aren't really agreeing with this. Here we are at the start of next week, a week's time, with shallow low pressures around northwestern Europe, perhaps bringing some showers to some parts of the country. There's that southwesterly push, a little bit later than the GFS, but it does bring it in eventually as we get through to Friday the 17th. Heights are building to the south. We've got the low pressure up to the northwest, so that could be the start of going in the same direction as the GFS, with high pressure eventually taking over. It's just that it's delaying the process, but it could end up at a similar place really to the GFS. But anyway, on Friday the 17th we bring up quite active weather systems and quite a warm southwesterly push as well, so warm and wet I think basically sums it up with that one. Now the GM is very unsettled for next week, no sign of high pressure building in at all. Here we are on Tuesday the 14th with a very deep area of low pressure around the country bringing a lot of rain, I'm quite sure. And as we get through to Friday the 17th, look at that, which really is very unsettled. Trough of low pressure is more or less over the top of the country, and the central pressure with that is somewhere around 980, 975 millibars, so it's really unsettled for GEM. No sign whatsoever of high pressure building in, so we do have to have a bit of caution about this at the very least, what's happening next week. On the face of it, the GFS is becoming quite keen to build high pressure. It's been doing it for the last 2 or 3 runs, so it could come off, but until the GM, particularly the ECM, start to pick up on it, I'd have some caution about it. But maybe signs that we're going back to high pressure for the second half of October. Of course, that could give us quite a different feel to the high pressure we had in September. It will depend very much on the exact orientation of high pressure, what kind of air mass we have within it, as to whether it'll be a warm high, cloudy high, or whether it'll be a clear and quite a cold high. So if we do go back to high pressure, by no means I guarantee that we're going to get really warm weather coming back. So let's just wait and see where we go. It's 5-day forecast. Let's go back to that. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.